Hey everyone, this is Corey Cummins from Manly Combos. Really excited for you to join us in today's episode. Today's going to be an interesting one. Not only is it 29 degrees Celsius in London, so both myself and Melanie are dying of heat and sweating profusely, but we actually have a really great conversation. As you know, Manly Combos was started to basically have combos to destigmatize men's mental health, and we do this in a couple ways. One is by having conversations with men that have gone to therapy. We also have conversations with mental health professionals. And also, I like to interview nonprofits and groups that are really doing great things to help men, kind of on their journey to mental health. And so today, I have Melanie from Men Against Mountain. And so I will actually pass it over to Melanie. So, Evan, would you mind giving a quick introduction on yourself and what is Men Against Mountain? That'd be great.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Corey. Thanks for the invite, first of all. So I'm Mel. I run a support hub called Men Against Mountains, the movement. I'm 53 years of age. I've had my own struggles over the last sort of 30 odd years. And it was only really through putting out my own struggles quite publicly that I started having messages from men mainly saying that they just didn't have anywhere that they felt comfortable enough to speak out or to speak with someone who they could trust. So after a couple of months, it literally just came to the point where I just thought, do you know what, I'm going to start just a page, an Instagram page on men's mental health and see what happens from it really. And it was started off by sharing men's lived experiences um, on the page by text and just putting out how they felt. I didn't really realize how over the years then it morphed into this just wonderful organic community that I'm really proud of, but also a place where men just feel safe to open up and just share their struggles, lived experiences of mental health, mental illness, but also like life support challenges as well, which I think is really, really important to discuss.
And so, what are it's really great to see what you're doing with Men Against Mountain, but what is it that you guys actually provide to men on a day to day basis to kind of help them through their journey and experience of everything?
Yeah, it's not just obviously it's me running the page, but with the men within the community, they're also helping to provide support to other men. So the idea is that a man shares on a live every week. We go live called the Summit Sessions, Sunday Summit Sessions. So these guys share their lived experiences of mental health and their life struggles, how they recover, and men listen in, and we connect those men together, especially those who resonate with the story. Um, and yeah, the connections are made within the page. I mean, I provide support via direct messages. We do have a WhatsApp group as well, which has got a facilitator, one of the lads that has followed my page right from the beginning. He's the facilitator of the group. So it's like a brotherhood that's just organically grown, and I provide that support, but mainly pinpointing to services or men's groups within the UK and abroad. I have men all over the world following my page. I don't like really saying following because it is a community. It's a community space, and yeah, I've kept it quite small. I worry more about digging deeper into the connections within the page and and infusing those more than worrying about people outside the community.
Sure. And so, I guess, are there, when people join the community and there's conversations, I guess, how is it structured? Is it just free flowing conversations, or do you try to speak about specific topics on, a weekly, daily basis? Like, how does it really work for someone that's never kind of joined Men Against Mountains?
Yeah, it's a bit of both actually. People organically obviously come across the page, um, but also I put out content. I'm trying to think a bit out of the box in the men's mental health space. So, being a woman, it's quite unusual for someone to run a men's mental health support space. But I want to give that like a nurturing woman's touch. I think
Mm.
That's really important in men's mental health and well-being. They seem to lack that. But also they need other men. Um, so that's where obviously the other men in the community come in. When I put a post, there's lots of always comments on each of the posts, and people sort of spark conversations, and that's the most important thing. It's about the community, is sparking conversations within the space and within the community to help men that may not be able to find their voice or haven't spoken out before.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to ask this question without you giving any names, but are there, any really, success stories or things you've seen from, because I'm sure you've seen it all the time on, the power of what you guys are doing, like the results that it's had or how it's helped someone?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, from starting the page 4 years ago, the men that initially were part of that community, I've seen so many breakthroughs and them flourish. But I see that every day on my feed. More men are speaking out personally on their accounts. So these aren't men's mental health advocates that are speaking out about men's mental health. These are men that just have their normal Instagram accounts that are putting out content about how they feel, and that's
Mm.
having that wonderful organic ripple effect on, it leads by example. um, it shows that, it's okay to speak out, it's okay to show those vulnerabilities, it's okay to feel that life isn't going how we expect it all the time, and it's just normalizing these conversations. So I'm seeing that on my thread. I tend not to follow too many mental health advocate pages, if that makes sense. Most of the community is men following the page that just have an interest and want to get better, want to improve their lives. And that's brilliant for me. That's amazing that it's not just mental health advocate pages that are following myself and that we give each other support, although that is wonderful as well. We have got this again organic sort of views, and this ripples out into the community. So I know that these spaces I can pinpoint these men to as well, which is really important. You probably heard of Andy Mann's Club and Talk Club,
Yep.
some really big organisation charities, but there's also some smaller ones as well that are doing some amazing work in this space. And they might only have 20 guys turning up each week, but they're doing what is needed in each local community. They're providing community spaces for men.
Yeah, actually, I spoke with Brotherhood Legion. I forgot
Yes,
how long ago, maybe a month ago,
Reese is
and he's doing
amazing.
great stuff as
Yeah,
well. Yeah, yeah. So everybody I'm speaking to is doing great things, and it's just exciting to see how it's really, really evolving. I guess because you've probably seen and spoken to a lot of men in Men Against Mountain, and
yeah,
it's funny you say that, having the nurture of a woman, and it kind of made me smile a little bit, because I would say probably 60-70% of my really close friends are women.
yeah,
And it's not surprising, because I'm quite into mental health, as you could imagine. And I feel like I kind of gravitate towards them a little bit, because usually they are a little bit more open, and
yeah.
I guess it's a little bit easier to talk about things that are more emotionally based. Now, I'm very open with my male friends about it, but it definitely makes sense. But with the men that you've seen join your community or haven't joined your community yet, I guess, are there some key reasons or key trends on why you think men are either, actually, let's break it down to two questions: why men aren't kind of getting help, and then the second question would be, and then what are the reasons why you see men are taking the initiative to maybe join something like Men Against Mountains?
Yeah, the first question, it's to me it was quite, when I first started the page, I first of all I've learned so much about men in the last 4 years than I ever have in my whole life. And that's because I've actually sat down and listened to these men and what their needs and their wants are. And the worrying part of that, through those conversations that I have continuously every day, sometimes up to 40 inbox messages, is that men still find it difficult to open up to the most loved people in their lives. So this can be
Mm.
partners, close friend sets, work colleagues. So in their everyday lives, they find that they can't open up because of maybe self stigmas, how they feel about it, but also like generational stigmas, the wider communities, and so, like, just how men are treated in society now. Um, it's almost like men are expendable. We don't have to care about men. They're okay. They'll tough it out. They'll get on with it. And yeah, it's not true. We need to do more and look after our men. It's really, really important.
No, yeah, the resume I wrote that down. He said men find it difficult to open up to
Yeah.
their loved ones, and it's interesting when I think back when because I started my journey into mental health when I was 25 because my mother, battled cancer and passed away, and when my mom was battling cancer, I didn't talk to like anybody about it. Obviously, everyone knew my mother was going through it, but I didn't open up to anybody about it. It was very much everything's fine.
Yeah.
She's okay, and obviously I'm 38 now, so it's a very different time in my life. But yeah, it's not surprising. I see it. I even see it at work. Sometimes I've seen colleagues who work for me will something very serious will happen, and then I'll find out weeks later. So it actually makes me a little sad because I know exactly what's going on, and the response is everybody's good. And I go, I was like,
Yeah.
that's a pretty serious thing that just happened to you
Yeah.
and your friends. But yeah, and I guess the the second question is so
Yeah.
why are you seeing people join? Like, what's making them join and kind of take that step?
Like I just said, because they don't find that they've got people they can trust to open up to, first of all. And men thrive, I think, in certain spaces. Like we've seen with the men's groups and these sort of online groups and stuff, when someone is met on the other side with compassion, understanding, when someone actually sits and actually really listens, men will talk. We've got this narrative in the UK, and some of the campaigns worldwide is that it's men's fault why they struggle with their mental health or life challenges because they don't talk. But we know men
Mm-hmm.
are talking. Men will talk if they are met, as I said, on the other side with understanding and compassion. And I think that's why my community works, because I will sit and listen. And those men that have gone through similar experiences that we put out on these lives or by in the post with the campaign I'm doing at the moment.
That makes complete sense. So for the second question, I guess why are men actually taking that step into going to a program, not a program, but a community like Men Against Mountains?
Yeah, I think they find themselves they need to open up to someone who they trust, like I've just said, and those people might not be um, people that are in their families or their friend set. It might be that they find it easier to open up to like-minded people that meet them on the other side with understanding and compassion and trust, I suppose. When you've been through your own struggles, I think it's easier to hold space for somebody else that's gone through something similar. And I think that's really important. And that's why my sort of page and the community works, like the Andy Man's groups, like all these other support spaces and charities that give like-minded support or provide that. It's sometimes easier to speak to someone you don't know and to open up. I mean, I can be at a bus stop and someone will open up to me. Um, I work in a gym. A lot of the men that come into the gym come for their mental health. So, they'll open up to me and have a coffee with me before they go and work out or afterwards. And they don't know me that well, but they'll find it easy to open up to. So I think if you can provide that space and you can provide that nurturing, you meet someone on the other side with understanding and compassion, makes a world of difference to how someone will then share.
Yeah.
I do hear that, some of the men that say, oh, I'm not going to open up again because last time I opened up, my partner used it against me later on, or, it was just someone laughed at me or told me to man up, told me to sort it out and toughen up, and that's those sort of things can shut a man down. So these like-minded spaces, you'll never be on the other side of that. You'll never be met on the other side with so much distaste and disregard to someone else's feelings.
Oh, Yeah, I could completely see that happening.
Yeah,
Man up, don't cry, all these types of things. As
yeah,
a man, they're supposed to kind of depict a certain thing.
yeah,
And yeah, I see it with friends as well. Like you can tell they want to talk about things, but the only
yeah,
time they'll do it is if they're under the influence of certain things to be able to have that
yeah,
conversation.
yeah,
But something that was really resonating to me, because you and I have been WhatsApping for a while now before this podcast, was kind of your I don't know, passion is probably not the right word, but your interest and kind of your dedication to helping men or in the community for, as we would say, just for Instagram on a live prevention and
yeah.
strategies and men's mental health support. And it would be good to understand what are some of the, the typical age demographics and things you're seeing. Because I remember one thing that you brought up to me was that it's actually the data is a little bit different than what we think where men are struggling for, potentially looking at
Yeah.
things like, being on a live.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is no disrespect to anyone that's putting out content in this space because it's important to cover all age demographics. But what we're
Mm,
finding, and through my own experience, and this comes from me speaking to men in the community, is that men of a certain age feel really left out of the conversation. They feel really left out of the campaigns. They
mm,
also don't resonate with some of the information that's going out because, as you said, they're a little bit older. So, men aged about 45 to 65 present the highest suicide rates worldwide. Um, but mostly you'll see on the campaigns is men under 35. So these men aren't even being advocated for, if that makes
mm,
sense. So they fit, and the risk and contributing factors, Corey, are so different to the younger generation men. So we need to break all this down. When we do advocate for men, we need to include everybody. It's really important, and that can't be done in one post. That can't be done. That has to be done separately. And hopefully that information gets to the right people at the right time as well.
because this, I remember when you said this to me, it was quite interesting to me. I've had a couple friends be on a live because of things that have happened in their lives, and I was quite surprised when it happened. But why do you think men 45 to 65 have higher rates of being on a live and taking action for that?
Yeah, it's really interesting when you research it, which I've done a lot of over the last couple of years. And probably the way I advocate now is different to how I first did, like from having these conversations and doing my own research. So what we find is that men of a certain age will not maybe compartmentalize their issues as a mental health issue. It will be
Mm,
more of a functional problem. So it could be they're going through physical health issues. They could be going through divorce. They could be split up. Their family home could have been split up, which can happen in at
mhm,
any age, obviously. Um, it could be a loss of a life partner. They could be going through grief, um, single status, job loss, financial crisis. So men of this age compartmentalize their mental health decline with functional problems, with more societal issues. And that is, we mustn't obviously forget about advocating for people with mental ill health, but we have to include that life events and challenges need to be included in the mental health space, and especially with men's mental health. A life challenge or a life event change is where men become most vulnerable. So a
mm,
man leaves the family home, there's no support for him, there's no financial support, there's no rehousing support. That's just one example. So that man might have to sofa surf for a while around his friend's house. He might end up homeless. He might have to be financially broken to try and find somewhere else to live. But that's those life challenges is what cause men to unalive themselves, and that's just one small example. The family court system is very biased in our country, in the UK. A lot of men unalive themselves because they can't see their children. So
mm,
it's not necessarily a mental health issue or a mental health complaint, it might be that their mental health has declined due to these stresses and these unfortunate series of events that happen to them. And that we must include that in mental health advocacy. We must consider life events too, because it's where men become vulnerable.
No, I completely agree. It's interesting. I've had a couple friends, and they're not, well, at least from what I know, they haven't thought about being unalive, but the couple of them have potentially, might get divorced. And the first thing they said to me was, I just don't know. Like, I think I would struggle to not be around my kids all the time.
Yeah.
And to hear them say that, because obviously, some of my friends are at that age where they might get divorced, and to hear kind of how much it really hit them, it's interesting to kind of hear what you're saying about this. So I can definitely see how that could be, how that could
Yeah.
really affect someone.
Yeah, and there's another side to it as well, because men of that age have been brought up maybe with generational stigmas. They also might have self stigmas as well. Um, and they become self-reliant, so they're more less likely to reach out for help or make that call at the doctor. As I said, like physical health complications can be entwined in mental health complications too. So you know, when an older man might verbally be, open, he might say it. Oh, my back's aching, or I've got a headache. These might be come out in physical ailments, but necessarily it might be a mental health issue or a mental health decline. So
Mm.
it's so complicated. And as I said, when you're advocating for men's mental health, um, it's hard to put all that information out in one post because the demographics, the reasons, the risks and contributing factors are so varied. Like with the younger generations, Corey, there's so much more social expectations on them these days to be financially, this Dubai style lifestyle, and they're not meeting that criteria. Only a small percentage of men will make that criteria. So the younger generation men feel like they're not living up to these expectations. There's more body dysmorphia in younger men.
Mm.
So everything needs that voice. And by sharing these stories of men of all age demographics, it's really interesting to see what complications they've had, what mental health complications they've had, but also the life challenges. And when you speak to men, they will talk about these massive life events, this crisis. The World Health Organization always advocates about reaching men before they reach crisis point. But
Mm.
when you Google what crisis is, it's when there's an immediate life change. It's when that immediate life changes. It's at that moment in time. It's that moment in time when they have to leave the family home because of divorce, and men will leave the family home because they're not going to allow their children and the mother. They put the needs of the mother and the children before their own. And men will just naturally do that. It's the way you've been brought up. It's the way you've been conditioned, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the cost of obviously men, there is a cost at the end of it. And these are as I said, the financial crisis that men see themselves in, the stigmas of not being able to open up and reach out. So yeah, we just need to do so much more. I wrote down, there's like a agreed remit that I try to work towards when I'm advocating for men's mental health, and I'll read it to you. And it's to continue to raise awareness of the disadvantages and poor outcomes faced by men and boys in education, mental and physical health, and law. So it's to influence the attitudes, role models, policy, and legislation that will lead to positive differences to men's overall well-being and their lives. And that's when I do my advocacy, that's what I tend to sort
Mm.
of go from. And that's come from years and years of research on men unliving themselves. That's what we need to do to change the spiraling numbers of men unliving themselves, each year. It's a crisis in itself.
Yeah, I feel like every couple of months I hear of it happening. Just a friend of a
Yeah,
friend or something. It's unbelievable.
yeah,
One thing that you were saying that I think would be good for people to understand is you were saying there's generational and self stigma.
yeah.
What do you mean by there's generational and self stigma? Can you just like dissect that a little bit more for
Yeah,
people.
of course. So generational trauma is from what's been passed down from father, from mother to son, etc. like that. So um, men were less likely to show their weaknesses, vulnerabilities back in when I was growing up, even in the 70s, that the 1970s, there was still that men tough it out. And you know, that over time, um, and pass through to generations, then obviously is quite worrying because then men will
Mm.
start feeling there is that self stigma that no one gives a shit, no one cares. What's the point of me opening up? There's no support for me. When actually there is lots more support than there was like 40, 50 years ago for men. We still have obviously got a lot of work more to do, to open these conversations and to highlight what the reasons why men struggle. Yeah, generation. I've spoken to many men that have been in my lives that have come from army life. Their fathers were in the military, their fathers are in the military, and how that was, and that's just a small example, how that was, passed down through generations. That these guys were, just tough it out all the time. And the thing is, you guys can be masculine, you can be soft at the same time, you can show your vulnerabilities, you can show your weaknesses. It doesn't make you less of a man. Um, and that's what we need to hopefully highlight and keep encouraging, that you're not going to be like that all the time. You can show your vulnerabilities. It doesn't mean you're going to go around crying every day. It's literally, how it's human behavior is what we need to normalize, is that all these emotions and all what men struggle with are human. It's no different to what
Mm.
women struggle with.
No, I agree. Well, there's nothing having a cry,
Yeah,
but
no, cry's good.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, no, that's really interesting because on all fronts, one, the different between age brackets and why they might experience different things, and then also the generational and self stigmas and how it kind of impacts people. And
Yeah,
yeah, the army thing does not surprise me, but I do think even for people outside of army, I think yeah,
yeah,
you learn from your surroundings and where you're
yeah,
at. And I grew up with a father who was amazing, loving, caring guy, and my mother was an amazing mother, but they weren't like my dad wasn't the type of guy to talk about his emotions or anything like that. And he'll show up, like if you're hurting, he'll be there, but when it comes to really digging deep and going for it, it's just not. And that's from generational.
yeah,
And my mom as well, like my mother was great, but she didn't really know how to handle her emotions looking back on it.
yeah,
Neither of them did. And it's interesting because my brother and I both have gone to therapy for different reasons. And it's we've had conversations about, why do I act this way? And
yeah,
or why do I perceive a situation like this? And then you look back like, oh, okay, that's the reason. That's the reason why. But, I could only imagine for people where they have parents who are like, you shouldn't show any emotion or anything like that.
yeah,
That makes it even harder to
yeah.
do that. Now, is there any, well, I guess one, two questions, similar thing, I guess, for someone who's, kind of struggling, not sure what to do, I guess, what steps would you tell them to take to try to, because some people aren't ready to fully jump into it.
No.
They might just want to dip their toes into it, might want to read a book or a podcast or anything like that. Is there any advice you give to someone that's listening on, how to try to figure it out and kind of get things moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think there comes a time in your own mental health journey, like myself, that you're ready to share. Or when we normalize these conversations and in our community, it makes it a little bit easier to nudge people just gently, coerce them to a little bit to start opening up. And I've seen that. I've seen men join my community and they haven't spoken out, they haven't commented, they haven't liked, but they'll continue to direct message me and say, "Oh God, that post really helped me today." So I think there becomes
Mm.
a time when everyone's ready. In your journey, and I think that becomes when we become more self-aware, and when we start the healing journey as such. That doesn't just come all at once. So if anyone's struggling, if a man is struggling and he doesn't necessarily know why, I would definitely advocate to obviously seek professional support. We always pinpoint men to professional support. Pick up that phone, ring your doctor, say things aren't feeling right. You know, there's nothing wrong in that. Um, and join a community like Men Against Mountains or like Andy Mann's Club or Talk Club, or spaces like yourselves. Listening to podcasts is one great tool. Listening in to other people's stories, um, it really helps you not feel so alone. Like listening to
Mm.
other people's lived experiences and struggles, and I think that the narrative of you know men feel very lonely, very, very isolated within their struggles as well. Those connections can really help as well. So making like-minded friends is really good. Join the groups, but also looking at you're responsible for the health of your mental health as well. So the accountability is so important. So we need to break it down about like what you said earlier about environment. Who are you surrounding yourselves with? Are you going out drinking beer and taking drugs every weekend and then taking 3, 4 days to recover, and your mental health just generally will just keep knocking down and down and down and notching down? Are you looking after yourself? Are you eating well? All these things. Are you getting outside? Are you doing exercise? What are you putting in? What are your rituals every day? So there's so much to how we look after ourselves, but part of that is accountability. Part of it is self-awareness, but also I'm always going to advocate about talking about how you feel. So find those right people that will sit and hold space for you. The biggest, um, the best feeling in the world is being understood, Corey. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable and you be met on the other side with understanding, it's life changing. And these men here have had that. Um, and I think that's the first step. It's the first step of being able to get the help that you deserve, because everyone deserves support and love, and being able to have a good health. We're all in need of good health, especially with all the with COVID and all what's gone on in the last few years, and the cost of living crisis. Everyone's on edge. Everybody is feeling the repercussions of other things, as well. And so yeah, surround yourself with the right people too is really, really important.
Well, I think on that, I think that's a perfect way to actually end today's session, because I think that was a really great statement, and I agree with all that. And I think it's something that hopefully people will hear, because it's something that I think would really resonate with everybody. So, Melanie, I really appreciate you
Oh, you're
joining me on Manly
welcome.
Combos. It was great to learn more about Men Against Mountains, and also always great, I think, to hear something different and new about men being unalive, because I think there's the more that we can shed light on things that men struggle with, because there's so many different reasons and things that men
Yeah.
struggle with, that hopefully this can have an impact. So yeah, hopefully this will come out in the next 4 to 8 weeks, and someone will listen to this and maybe join Men Against Mountains, which would be great.
You might have to edit it a lot, Corey.
It's all right. That's no problem. That's
with
that's
the, with
easy.
the with the sweating and the hot weather as well, but it's not helped today. But thank you
Well, I have
so
my
much.
fan over here.
Thank you so much. I'll have to return the favour and have you on the summit sessions one week. It'd be great to
Yeah,
have
that'd be great.
the other side. It'd be lovely to hear your story.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to join.